Capcom surprised everyone last week by revealing A.K.I's gameplay trailer just a few weeks ahead of their Tokyo Game Show presentation. After watching a lot of other reactions and attempted breakdowns, I feel that there wasn't enough informed presentation on what all was shown of her, so that's why I've made this video. I'm not going to touch on very many of A.K.I's normals because there really isn't much information to go on, but there are a few to mention. One of the more obvious ones is this attack, which is fairly blatantly shown to be an overhead attack. A few others are obvious callbacks to F.A.N.G. In particular, what we can only guess is her standing heavy kick is a two-hitting, forward-moving attack that is familiar enough to F.A.N.G's, though with her own distinct styling. Much in the same way, these double kicks from her coward crouch stance are a spin on F.A.N.G's old Senpukuga kicks. They even show her being able to get a follow-up crouching jab on hit, just like F.A.N.G at Street Fighter V's launch. This seems to be A.K.I using a target combo that actually ends up poisoning the opponent. This is surprising because not only did F.A.N.G completely lack target combos in SF5, he also didn't have any normals that would inflict poison. I've seen some people speculating that this is a special cancel, but the animation looks too fluid to be a cancel in my opinion. I firmly believe it's a target combo. Later in the trailer we see this exact same two-hit sequence, lending further evidence that it would be a target combo. We also see her do what I believe to be a different target combo that also inflicts poison, this time triggering what Capcom has termed a toxic blossom. This is an effect that triggers when she uses an attack that inflicts poison on an opponent that's already poisoned. As per the words of the blog, it results in an explosion that can open enemies up to follow-up attacks. This is very different from F.A.N.G, as he didn't have any interaction with his poison past just applying it to the opponent. It seems like A.K.I will be able to choose to play more offensively and reap rewards for successfully opening enemies up while they're still withering under the effects of her poison. While we're on the topic of poison, it's already been confirmed that hers will work much like F.A.N.G's in that it will slowly deal damage over time to an opponent's health bar. If A.K.I gets hit while it's applied, the poison effect will be removed from them. What's not made clear is how long the poison lasts, or if there's even a limited duration to begin with. In Street Fighter V, F.A.N.G would either need to be hit, or the poison would eventually fall off after about 8 seconds. I'd say it's safe to assume that A.K.I's poison will also not have an indefinite duration, but she's a new character in a new game with entirely different mechanics, so who knows. This chain or whip-like attack is A.K.I's Serpent Lash. While there isn't exactly a one-to-one equivalent from F.A.N.G's kit, I'd say it sort of acts like her version of his Sotoja. While it might not look like it, Sotoja was actually considered a projectile for F.A.N.G, hitting twice and moving him forward to give him extra range. With A.K.I it seems like hers is significantly less goofy, keeping her at a distance while also giving her a potential threat from farther spacings. The OD version also pulls her toward her opponent. I actually think this follow-up that they show here in the trailer is a separate move, mostly because you can see that the yellow glow is gone before she even uses it. This leads me to believe this might actually just be a command normal that inflicts poison, which makes it trigger the toxic blossom in the clip. Every other move in Street Fighter VI that's a multi-hitting move keeps the yellow flash throughout its entire duration, meaning that the OD version of her Serpent Lash simply pulls her forward and allows for her to follow up with her choice of normal. In this next part of the trailer they show what seems to be A.K.I's Fireball, Nightshade Pulse, immediately followed up by a Serpent Lash. However, I think this might actually be what was referred to in the PlayStation blog as a Nightshade Chaser. The reason that I think this is because, once again, the animation is incredibly smooth. It looks like she flows straight from sending out the bubble right into the whip without any jerkiness at all. This leads me to believe that it's a direct follow-up attack rather than a cancel or well-timed link. Regardless, Nightshade Pulse is sort of like a combination of F.A.N.G's Nisha Q fireballs and his V-Skill 1, Nishodoku. It travels directly forward much like Nishodoku, but actually has an active hitbox which makes it very different in terms of application and functionality. The reason that I think this is a combination of F.A.N.G's V-Skill and Fireball is because later in the trailer they show A.K.I throwing out an OD Nightshade Pulse and cancelling the end of the animation into a snake step command dash. F.A.N.G could do this exact same thing with his Fireballs as well. He was able to cancel any regular Fireball into an EX command dash, or his EX Fireballs into any version of his command dash. We can see that Snake's step will have some projectile invulnerability and also allow for her to pass through her opponent, much like F.A.N.G's. His version was able to cancel the end of the animation into a coward crouch, but it's unclear from the trailer whether A.K.I will be able to do this as well. I think that this next part is another example of her Nightshade Pulse Interchaser. Since there aren't any other moves mentioned in the PlayStation blog, my theory is that this attack is a different strength of Nightshade Pulse, which is why it looks different from the bubble she blew before this. In this clip they show her placing down her Orchid Spring. This is her version of F.A.N.G's Rio Bender trap. From what little we see of it in the trailer, it does seem to differ from his in that it doesn't appear to have a hit effect. You can see here that JP teleports into its proximity and gets poisoned, but there isn't any actual hit. Instead, it's more like F.A.N.G's V Skill 1, which was unblockable, and if you touched it you'd have poison applied to you. F.A.N.G would place his traps down to shield him from approaches while he would pelt away with fireballs, or a knockdown for some pressure or mix-up opportunities. It seems that A.K.I might use hers as a way to guarantee poison on knockdowns, or perhaps to deny some space if the opponent does not want to risk getting poisoned. It's not made clear in the trailer, but F.A.N.G's Rio Bender traps would disappear if he got hit, so it's safe to assume that A.K.I.'s will as well. The recovery on her Orchid Spring seems very low, as she's able to anti-air Chun-Li's jump attack after placing it. One other possibility is that the trailer only featured the light version of her Orchid Spring, and that the other versions might have actual hitboxes in exchange for slower startup or more recovery. At the very minimum, I'd imagine that the medium and heavy versions will start slower but also make the trap last longer, or possibly even cover a wider area. When she anti-airs Chun-Li, it looks like she does so with what I would guess is the heavy version of her Serpent Lash. It definitely looks like there's some frames that are air invulnerable, though the angle of this as an anti-air seems to be pretty narrow. She does scoot forward a very small amount before sending her chain up, but it might not be the most reliable anti-air for jump-ins from further out. This clip shows off Cruel Fate, one of her moves that doesn't have a F.A.N.G equivalent. There isn't too much to glean from the clip, but it is shown as something that can be used to get around fireballs. I imagine that because it's airborne it will also get over some low-hitting attacks, but with the seemingly slow startup that's venturing more towards a hard read and is probably more risk than is necessary for her to take. The clip also cuts out before we can see if she recovers in time to get a combo from it, unfortunately. We do see that the OD version seems to go into an animation on hit, and that it's considered airborne very quickly, so it might be a strong option in niche situations such as utilizing the Ken animation time to go through Rashid's Yizar. This creepy little crawl is called Sinister Slide. This is her take on F.A.N.G's Coward Crouch, though it seems that she's also able to approach while in the stance. Additionally, F.A.N.G was only able to cancel his Coward Crouch into the double kicks, or into his fireballs. A.K.I has three options: her double kicks, a leaping attack that seems to go over lows, and a command grab. The combination of options as well as the added mobility makes the stance much more potent. And if that wasn't enough, she's actually able to cancel into the stance as well. In Street Fighter V, the stance could not be cancelled into from normals, so F.A.N.G couldn't truly weave it in strings to create mixes or pressure, so A.K.I's version overall seems more dangerous. One other thing I wanted to touch on is how I think A.K.I will be a character that wants to keep herself at long-range spacing. There are several times in the trailer that we can see how she very consistently leaves herself far away from the opponent. Her back throw, level 1 and level 2 supers all seem to put her a full screen away, as does Serpent Lash if it triggers a Toxic Blossom. Even this version of Nightshade Pulse into Nightshade Chaser pushes them to a long distance. Obviously there are exceptions to this. Her forward throw leaves them at a medium distance, as does her command grab. Her venomous F.A.N.G even keeps her point blank. She seems to be fairly plus after the knockdown on this target combo and the OD version of Cruel Fate, so even with the distance created there is probably ample opportunity for her to go for A.K.I even in mid-screen. For those that didn't play F.A.N.G in Street Fighter V and are interested in A.K.I, there are a few things that might be noteworthy to you. Namely that without meter F.A.N.G did not have a reliable reversal, only having full invincibility on his EX command dash, which is obviously not the same as having something like a wake-up DP. It seems that A.K.I will have this same downside. He was also a charge character, though I'd say from the trailer that it's not very easy to tell whether or not A.K.I will be. I hope that helped put some extra context to what was shown in A.K.I's trailer. See you guys on September 27th when she releases.